Hello, today we're doing a complete quick guide to the OG Mazda Speed, the Mazda Speed Protege. We're going to do an overview of this thing, followed by a complete concise review of it, then a buyer's guide, what to look for, and common problems, followed by a mod guide. So let's start it off with an overview. This was the first Mazda Speed ever released in 2003. This was followed by the Mazda Speed Miata, which we've also done a complete quick guide on, and I'll link up in the top right hand corner, might even leave it in the comments down below. And that made way for the Speed 6 and both the Speed 3s. Now it was released only in 2003, and they only made 2,000 of these, which means that you're 3 times more likely to see a Ferrari 488 Pista than a Mazda Speed Protege. Yeah. So this is based on a standard Protege, or a Familiar in other countries, which is basically the predecessor to the Mazda 3. So if we compare this to a Gen 1's Mazda Speed 3, the Protege is 2 inches shorter, also 2 inches narrower and lower, with the same wheelbase. But if you compare that to a modern Mazda 3, the Mazda Speed Protege is 9 inches shorter, 3 narrower, and 2 lower. Now what's with weight? It weighs 1,290 kgs, which is 140 less than a Gen 1 Speed 3. It's powered by a 2-litre 4-cylinder with a turbo on it. This turbo system was set up by Colorway, and it runs a ball-bearing Garrett turbo pushing 6.9 psi. Okay, Mazda. Now, of course, it's got port fuel injection, dual overhead cam. It's a 2-litre 4-wanger. All that means that puts out 170 horsepower, 160 pound-feet of torque. Of course, it is manual, front-wheel drive with a factory LSD. All that means that 0 to 60 is done with in 7.5 seconds. You may be thinking, that really doesn't sound like a lot. But you have to think, back in the time, right? What was the Golf GTI putting out? Well, that was only put out 178 horsepower, still front-wheel drive manual, but did 0 to 60 in 7.7 seconds. So they are very similar. Then I think now we go into the review. Let's start with the positives. First of all, this car, much unlike the Mazda Speed Miata, can fit in tall people. If you're 6'4", you'll somehow fit in this, even though it's quite small. And just like the Mazda Speed 3s and all that, it's got a factory sub with a 7-speaker stereo. That's pretty good.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Its turning radius is nice and tight. I know a lot of you aren't really interested in that. So let's get on to the fun stuff. It's got a factory LSD, and honestly, in 2022, that's the first time every Golf GTI will have a factory LSD. So that is very good. The shove you get from the boost and the torque is really nice and addictive, but it still only has 160 pound-feet of torque, so it doesn't really have that much torque steer. It is still there for a bit of excitement. Engine revs up nice and fast, exactly what you want. It's got a nice bit of turbo whistle there. The steering, it's nice, it's predictable. The shifter feels really nice and tight. Same can be said for the handling. This is really good for a front-engine, front-wheel drive car, even by today's standards. And being an older car, the A pillars, the B pillars, all that are very thin, and there's so much glass around you, the visibility is really, really good. You also get a lot of mechanical feel because it's old, but that's where we go into the negatives. Now, since it's old, the steering turns lock to lock is quite high. This means that the steering feels quite slow. Another thing, these engines can't take that much power before they like to, not love life no more. From factory, it's got a metal shift knob, which sounds nice and high quality until it's winter and it freezes your palm, or it's summer and it burns it. Yeah, and sort of around that shifter area, the shifter is quite heavy. 170 horsepower. Well, it was alright for back in the day. Kind of moved along. It's definitely, acceptable. I'll say it's nippy by to modern standards. It's not fast or anything. But, there's nothing wrong with that. Like the Miatas and all that, they're a momentum car, and that's kind of what makes them fun. Then let's go on to the buyer's guide. So what should you look for when you buy one? Now, they're only made for one model year, and there's only 2,000 of them. There's not much to pick and choose about, honestly, apart from the colour. There's orange, silver or grey, yellow and blue. But I mean, there's only 2,000. If you find one, you find one, so yeah. And that's about all the choice you have. Now we get onto common problems. The main one, right, is what they call smash gas. Basically, you floor it, and you sort of feel, hesitation, it sort of bogs down, and what's happening there is that the ECU is dumping in heaps of fuel, it runs really, really rich, and basically, yeah, you go nowhere. However, Mazda dealers have got a tune to fix this. It should have been done already, so you shouldn't really experience it, but yeah, this was sorted out ages ago. And anyways, going on, right, it's got plastic intercooler pipes, and these do like to break. So just look over them. If there is something big about it, it will basically barely run when you try to get into boost. And that's just, yeah, new intercooler piping, not too bad. Coolant leaks, that's kind of common on these. Just check all the hoses, and yeah, if it's bad, just new coolant hoses, not too bad. Then we get on to the mods, right? So one thing, the Mazda 6 brakes bolt right up to it, so that's an easy big brake upgrade. One thing that would be really nice is a block valve, because it's boosted and it's do. A short shifter kit. Now I have heard kind of a bit of confusion. Some people say that the shift's quite long in these, but still tight. Other people say it's quite short, so yeah. And since this is an older car, the bushes and the engine mounts gotta be wearing out, so some new bushes and engine mounts. And that's one thing with these, don't buy these to mod for power. They are quite hard to make power on. In fact, the weakest link of this whole thing is basically the engine. The turbo, the trans, and the clutch will outlast the engine in terms of power. The trans and clutch kind of go about 300 wheel, while the engine on stock internals will be done by like 230 wheel. But remember, this is an old car, it's a light car, it's more of a momentum car. It's pretty good for it. But why is the engine so weak? Basically, they used the exact same internals, slapped the turbo on, and yeah, that was it. If you want some more power, intake cutback intercooler with a fuel ignition controller and a super airflow converter, 200 wheel. If you want to max out the stock internals, add in injectors, a fuel pump, and the intercooler pipes, that's 230 wheel. And that's it, the Mazda Speed Protege. If you did enjoy, smash a like. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.